On the buses, written and told by Tony Wilson. On a late deal trip to Cyprus, a trip to Debenham's Paphos does not go according to schedule. "You no get on the bus." The way the burly driver said it made me think that I had given him the wrong number of euros. I reached for some more unintelligible shrapnel, disguised as legal currency, out of my suntan oil-stained shorts, and this time he points menacingly at my feet. "No! You no get on bus!" There's less of a questioning tone to his voice this time, and I casually noticed that you could make two of me out of his muscular bulk. He's pointing at the thick mud on my sandals and legs. "You no get on the bus!" As I'm watching him scoop my money into the neat trays of coins, I'm thinking, if you hadn't made us go another 30 yards along this motorway by the side of the building site, then we wouldn't have had to have run through the quagmire caused by last night's rain in the first place. And anyway, you usually stop anywhere you please on this dusty, exclusive two-lane racetrack without a proper bus shelter, so we had to stand in the shadow of the hoarding for Ken Hursley, lead singer for Uriah Heep, who, by the way, I have never heard of, on his one-day tour of Cyprus. So don't give me muddy feet, Sonny Jim. At least that's what I was thinking. When he stabbed at the air with his thick finger and pointed for us all to get off the bus and "clean feet" in the muddy pool and damp dead grass by the side of the road, I actually whimpered, "All right." You see, I was not alone by the side of the road. Whilst waiting for the erratic bus service to take us into the teeming metropolis of Paphos, my wife and I had struck up a conversation with a couple from Walsall. It had been the usual early morning pre-7:30 a.m. talk about how good the weather was, how lovely the staff were, even if they didn't change the sheets or actually make the bed. In fact, it was more a case of vague uncrumpling and then tucking them in whether they covered the mattress or not. There were the usual pleasantries about where we were from and how many times we had or hadn't been to the same place again and again since the children were small. As it happens, this was our first time, the first time that we had been to Cyprus, and we found it to be like all the best bits of England, with decent weather. Let's face it, it is so like England. I have never felt so foolish as when I found myself with 2 cases filled with EU plug converters, when they have the same electricity as us, and they drive on the left-hand side. Then came the killer question of supermarkets. Mr. Walsall said, "They charge €5.75 for a can of corned beef that John West rejected. That's why we're going into Paphos. There's a great supermarket there where..." That was when we noticed the number 15 streaking down the road as if it was giving Jensen Button a run for his money. Running, nay, leaping like demented windmills by the side of the horizon, staring Ken Hursley, who, by the way, looks as if he'd been hanging out with Willie Nelson for too long and has forgotten to take his Synatogen as a day. We managed to stop the bus and struggle on as if we were mounting Dunkirk Beach, except we were covered with mud, dressed for a poolside fashion show, and here there were no stuckers. So that was how we came to be scraping our clay-encrusted sandals on the already muddy ground of this building site and being cursed in pidgin English, "Why you no wait at the bus stop?" All I could think of was that we were being subjected to some oft-repeated ritual humiliation by a surly driver, being watched by tut-tutting and despairing looks in their comfy, air-conditioned seats, as we take enough clay from our souls to fit the mud baths at Thalos, and have enough left over to make a huge Greek amphora. Like some mean mud monitor, we are made to show the progress of our efforts, and he does or does not let us on one by one, except for me. I was wishing that I had played football and had some practice at cleaning my studs. No matter what I did, it wasn't enough for him or the sighing passengers. In the end, I take my sandals off and make a point, as only the British can, of putting my sandals into a carrier bag and stepping onto the platform barefoot, as the four of us try to regain some dignity and get to Paphos. As we try to make our way to the seats, a loud "You stand here!" is barked at us, and we are made to stand at the front of the bus, and we have to stand in the mudslide we have placed on his once pristine platform. Thankfully, we and our two new friends don't fixate on our predicament and talk about the good parts of the holiday. We laugh about the Dick Turpinopoulos pair in the hotel supermarket who had received a Securico delivery of Heinz baked beans.
At €4.95 a tin, that's daylight robbery.
We talk about the fact that we're going to look at the mosaics in the town. That's why we are up so early, we twitter. We want to be able to see all of them before it gets too hot. We love the Tomb of the Kings and it's then that we notice the look of horror on the collective Walsols' faces.
Oh, the mosaics! I didn't know there were mosaics here in Cyprus.
There's a stony silence developed between us. If we had said we were going to steal their children and rob their house, they couldn't have looked more horrified. Obviously, we are on a different holiday to them, where sightseeing is an interruption to sunbathing. The 15-minute journey has never felt so long as bemused, clean-shod passengers get on and have to push past a group of 4 people standing on the platform to get to their seats on an almost empty bus. Standing, forcibly being made to be in the way by a belligerent bully of a bus driver, makes any journey either funnier or longer or both. I would be lying if I said that I wasn't relieved that we got to our destination by, of all things, a crossroad marked by a Debenhams and a Peacocks. In a typical way that we all have, we say, "Thank you," not in a sarcastic way, and we mean it. As I put my overweight sandals back on, I make an obviously theatrical mental note of the bus number plate and his worksheet, as the driver curses us all in fluent English, pulls away and makes a phone call to bus station HQ about another stroppy group of English people and their filthy sandals. Engrossed in cleaning our own shoes, we lose contact with one another, and the Walsols go on their way as we try to find a muddy puddle to wash our feet. Most of what we find in the nearby open-top double-decker car park looks like it contains stingy, bitey, invertebrate life, and it is Anne who spots a set of rickety steps by the side of a jetty leading down to the cool, clear, lapping azure blue water of the Mediterranean. It always seems to be that no matter how expensive the catamaran is, they still have the least well-kept sets of steps leading to their marine luxury. They are barely made for walking on, never mind stamping out the thick, gooey grime of roadside clay. As she stamps up and down on the tiny, waterlogged wooden platform, the once cool, clear, lapping azure blue water of the bay takes on the hue of effluent from an open sewer, and can probably be seen from outer space and be listed as an environmental danger. I would like to say that I am concerned for a danger, but in reality I am hooting and guffawing about watching her clean her shoes by the side of a millionaire's yacht, where one wrong step would plunge her into the danger and me into spasms of hysteria. Finally, we can get to the entrance of the impressive mosaics of Paphos, and it still isn't 8 o'clock. As well as posters, pictures and guides, the whole place is filled with historical promise and excitement of getting to know just what it was like to live in ancient times. We readily hand over our €3.40,
the price of a rasher of bacon,
in anticipation of a glimpse of the wonders of an older world. The site is huge, and the first path leads us to a spacious, inviting visitors' centre filled with explanatory texts, pictures, diagrams. But it is with dismay that we realise it has a beautiful, newly washed marble floor. We know that we will have to miss out on this educational nirvana as the two uniformed guards look as if they are a second Dan black belt mud police, and our errant footwear is not for the likes of this place. The museum is well appointed throughout, and the mosaics are painstakingly and probably laboriously restored and presented in well-constructed wooden houses that are meant to mimic the original dimensions of the Hellenistic buildings of so long ago. There is ample space to go on the wooden walkways and take photographs, albeit foreshortened ones, and get a feel of what it would be like to live in such illustrated opulence. At first, we make up stories to amuse ourselves about what we can see. Remember, we haven't had a chance to go to the visitors' centre. We make up tales of brave Ulysses fighting with a cat blanket as his feet are caught up in fish, but then, looking at all of the beautiful images, it is possible, with an application of rudimentary algebra and half-forgotten Greek and Latin lessons, to make out the texts impressed into the tiles. Pyramus looks like a quadratic equation, but it is readable. Dionysius reads like a roadside warning, and with our newfound deciphering talent, we cast our minds back to stories of Bacchus and Zeus, and the whole of the museum opens up like a fabulous storybook. It is then, in the heat of the 10 o'clock sun, after looking at the fabulous mosaics in the house of Dionysius, that my mind wanders. The lady of the house steps forward. Her fine cotton gown flows over her shoulders, and with a voice as sweet as honey, she steps forward towards the supine workman surrounded by broken coloured tiles, his hands grimed with plaster and lime, and she asks, "We have the Emperor coming for Saturnalia. I would like a procession of lions and a dedication to Hadrian. What mosaic could you do for me by then?" He is obviously used to speaking and working upon his knees, and without an upward glance he speaks. "I could do you a bee." She is shocked. "A bee? A bee? I was hoping for something much more grand than a bee." He sucks at his gums and contemplates her confusion and disappointment. "Not any old bee, but a great big bee. Big as this floor." He pauses. "I'll tell you what, seeing as how it's you, I'll throw in a free squid by the side of a portrait of your husband." "A bee? A bee? I was hoping for something to impress the Emperor." Without taking his eyes away from the intricate work at her feet, he replies, "Look, I can't do you any fairer than this. A free squid, a portrait of your husband, and a big bee for the Emperor. Take it, or leave it." As his voice echoes and dies in the huge hall, she points to him. "Are you taking uppers?" His shoulders contort as he realises what she has said. "Oh, very good. Latin. Apis. Latin for a bee." Outside and in the glare of the sun, I snap back into reality as we find ourselves at a barely visited, overgrown part of the site, and under the dried weeds we can see a partially uncovered mosaic that has been washed by the previous night's rain. After what we've read from the posters and explanatory text in the other parts of the museum, we can tell that it is one of the lost scenes from the series of mosaics about the trials of Hercules. I'll never get used to call him Heracles, and I will always imagine him in the form of a slightly tubby Victor Mature. The outline is unmistakable, and the hieroglyphs are, if anything, easier to read than the picture itself. Our collective hearts are thumping with the enormity of the importance of this discovery. Ours are the first eyes to see this in nearly 2,000 years. Hercules, muscular and beautifully formed, dirty and scarred from battle, is on his knees bending down on all fours before a horse and a golden wheeled carriage. The colours are strong and vivid, and as bright as the day they were placed on the floor of the bathing house. The rider has his right hand raised towards the god, and is indicating towards Hades with his left hand in a half-closed fist. The rest of the picture is obscured, but the writing is so clear that even I can make it out. Slowly, carefully, I piece together the words, and then make them into something that seems the right order. The message is so old, but still so clear. You might be Heracles, chosen one of the gods, the brightest star of Mount Olympus. Heracles, oh no, you're not getting on my chariot with those muddy sandals.